Are you a media fanatic? Are Facebook and Twitter a part of your everyday life? Do you know you could make a career out of media law? The world of media is fascinating. From big screens to celebrities, it is always enticing and equally challenging. The impact of media is strong enough to not influence young minds and hearts, but also to create a huge uproar amongst the masses in case of a discontent. Media law has recently emerged as a huge platform for young advocates to explore. The reason, if you may ask, is simple. Media is not restricted to the radio and television anymore. There is theater, cinema, social media, YouTube, Netflix, and all the recent application based video streaming platforms. With the recent cases, particularly because of the Film Certification Board, CBFC, the resources to meet the demands of such specialization in media laws is very scarce. Joining us today on an hour with LawSikho is one such media law specialist, Advocate Satya Banerji. The Senior Legal Counsel, South and Southeast Asia at ViewClip Inc. Prior to ViewClips, Mr. Satya has worked with organizations like Z Entertainment, Motion Pictures, Reliance Broadcast, Balaji Telefilms, etc. With specialities like copyright, TMT, and film and music-related laws, Satya is a brand name in himself in the media law fraternity. Satya, we welcome you on an hour with Law.
Thank you, Aditya, for having me. Good
It's
evening,
an
everybody.
absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Satya. To start with, we would like to know a little bit more about yourself, although your achievements and your CV is a long list in itself, but we would still like to know a bit more about you.
Well, I think you've said, thank you for a brilliant introduction, Aditya. About me, I am pretty much a media and entertainment lawyer. I've always been one since the day I graduated. Actually, a couple of years before I graduated, I got into media and entertainment through my internship, and I have never looked back ever since. So, just to give a crust, I've started off my career in Balaji Telefilms, went into the corporate society called PPL and IMI. I was with RBNL, and then I was also with Group M, followed by Motion Pictures Association, Z, and now I'm with ViewClip. That's pretty much been my journey for the last 10 years in media and entertainment. And of course, it's been a fantastic journey, and it's just a beginning, I guess.
That is very modestly put, I must say. So, Satya, when did you realize that you want to get into media laws, and how did you go about the whole process of starting from a law school to getting into Balaji Telefilms? I'm sure the journey must be great. So, what went behind the making?
Sure. So, one thing, like any industry where you want to get yourself into, I think it's very important to have focus and an achievable target. You've got to be realistic in what your goals are, and also be aware about what your surroundings are. So, to give a brief background, I've done my law from Bombay University. It was a postgraduate law degree. So in the last couple of years, when of my law school, I was doing a full-time internship. I did it with a media and entertainment lawyer, and that is pretty much my first blood. You get an exposure of what the industry is. You get a understanding of how people think, behave, and react in it. It's very different from your standardized corporate industry. It is much more casual. If you are come across to formal, people see you as overbearing and see you as a lawyer, which may not work in your brand. And having said that, you have to work yourself within the nuances and, of course, understand it. A lot of interpersonal relationships come in. You have to capitalize on them. A lot of networking is important, and you have to take that and from each stint you move back and forth. That's where you go ahead in your career. And when it comes to breaking into Balaji, so as I said, my last 2 years I did my internship. So this is something which I think I would strongly advise anybody who would like to get into media and entertainment law is when you are doing a 5-year law degree or a 3-year law degree, pretty much by the end of your first year itself or a second year, you would have a tentative idea where you are going, or you would have an interest from the moot courts that you attend, or what your colleagues are doing, or what your classmates are doing, etc. And once you have that idea and the nuances, you may want to look for internship opportunities, focusing on those kind of areas of practice. So there are a lot of media and entertainment companies that look for summer interns. I'm aware that Z does, and I'm aware several other companies do too. And I think that's where you proactively reach out to them with a good skill set. You, of course, need to have good credentials, and your marks should reflect well. Having said that, there's no such thumb rule that you have to be from a national law school and you have to be from an ETA university. You can be from a pretty good college as long as you have the skill set, the gumption, and the zeal to pursue your dreams. So, as I said, focus on internship. So once you have that, what happens is it brings that edge which you would have over your compatriots who would be vying for the same position. And so when Balaji, for example, opened up, I remember that I was actually competing with people from national law schools, and I'm not from a national law school myself. I'm just from a regular college in Mumbai. And having said that, what did bring me onto the table was understanding the industry experiences. So, what I used to go with my senior, and I used to spend long hours, very low pay, uh, during the internship hours, is to understand how your clients think, what they expect out of you, how they interact with each other, the body languages. Well, when is it a yes, when is it as a no, etc., etc. And that helps you understand it because that brings you to the ability to negotiate your agreements, your when you dealing with talents, etc. And in media and entertainment industry, it's all about interpersonal relationships. How you come across to your client, whether you're an in-house counsel or whether you're an external counsel, is very important. And I think that was what helped me with the break.
Sada, you spoke about the fact that a lot of interpersonal relationships help in the media industry. Along with that, there are also certain key skills that an individual requires to be able to be a part of the media industry. What are these skills that you're talking about? What sort of a personality do you develop over a period of time to get into media laws?
See, as I said, there's no such straight set rules about getting into what kind of personality excels. I think, a couple of things which you want to keep in mind is you should always be aware about how the industry is evolving. It is very important to know how technology is being embraced. You have to be up the ante. You have to be aware about what the laws and regulations are, as you had rightly pointed out earlier, and pretty much take that forward. And having said that, once you've understood these nuances of how your surroundings are and the awarenesses are, for example, you uh, uh, you know bring in your skill sets, which is your IP skills, your grades, of course, and understanding basically how the entire ecosystem of the media and entertainment industry functions. Primarily look at the money aspect of it. My senior asked me, whenever you're working on a media and entertainment contract, just think of yourself as the most conservative miser person, and try to avoid giving out anything without putting a value to it. And I think that is very important, is knowing your IPR skills. Right? And one thing I would strongly advise people is to take up IPR in your final year. For you to have a good break in media entertainment. Otherwise, it can be quite overwhelming. Though other corporate laws are very important, I think a head start in understanding of IP, IPR, and primarily copyright is very important for media.
All right. Thank you so much for making us understand that. When I move to the next question, my next question is about the struggles that are involved in media law. It is a common perception that to make a career into media law in India is a struggle in itself. Do you agree with this? And if yes, then what can one potentially avoid this struggle period and get into a good position in itself?
So, as I said, there is a struggle, and I will not deny that it's not there. As I said, you are competing in a very competitive market. So, for example, if you're and I'm reaching out to not the top scorers of of your respective colleges, but I would be actually reaching out to the average Joe, the guy whose grades may not be the top of the class, and who might not be looking aspiring to get themselves or they feel a little let down with their scorecards. Having said that, you have to be determined. So as I said, be strategic in your approach, know what you want. So for example, if you want to get into music, the music industry. You have to know who and what, where, how, and when to apply. So you have to know, for example, when is a good time that your jobs are open. Generally, I would strongly suggest it is the month of March and April. That's when a lot of movements happen. So positions open up, budgets are open within organizations. That's where positions open up, and that's just when you have to keep your radar on. Having said that, you may want to use your, as I said, reach out to people, have a good set of, for example, as I said, what when you do your internship, you meet people, they recollect you. So if you've met media and entertainment personalities, you can use their references, you can use certain projects which you've worked on as a positive, affirmation towards your goals. And so whenever you're presenting your CV, make it very goal oriented. Customize your CV to that particular role. Don't keep it very generic. So, for example, you may have done your internship in maritime laws, hypothetically speaking. It's a great prospect and it's a great career. Having said that, that would bring no value in media and entertainment industry. So that you may not want to highlight that in your CV. Having said that, if you have just done a couple of projects on a couple of very good contracts in your internship, or you've scored very well in your contract laws, etc., I think that would you may want to highlight that, or your IPR, any IPR related projects which you must have done, a presentation, a moot court, or something a good score, which will help you edge out to your competition. I think that's very important, and just keep it simple, keep it focused, and keep it lean. I think that's what I would suggest. When you find a good opportunity, make sure go through the JD very carefully. Go through each of the words, how it's described, what are the skill sets that is required. Then you see the organization which you're applying to. So, for example, if it's though it's a media company, not all media companies are very liberal. So keep in mind that if you're working for a media, if the media company is a conservative media company, keep that approach. Similarly, if it's a liberal media company, or if it's a new media company, keep that outlook or see how their values are. So read through the company, go to the website, do your due diligence before you apply. And once you apply to it, make sure you chase it, until you get a conclusion. So I think a lot of recruiters, including, are very helpful, and they give you positive feedback. So, for example, if you do not succeed, they will give you where where you have fallen short, and that would help you polish up and cover up that particular thing. Having said that, a lot of incidences which happen in your past, you may want to rephrase it, and I think that is something which is where you would want to come in. So, for example, if you've done a graduation X and your postgraduate law degree in Y, why is this? So you may want to tailor your CV in that particular manner, and I think that's very important of how you present your CV with the specific JD. So don't go all guns blazing. Keep it crisp. Keep it short. Keep it focused to that particular job opportunity, and most likely you're going to get a call. It's been lucky for me, touch wood, and I'm sure it's been lucky for a lot of people I'm aware about.
All right, Satya. The next question that I have from you is coming from Rishabh Gupta. Presently in India, the content available to prepare on media laws is very limited. We do not find a lot of resources wherein we can find good information and keep ourselves updated with media laws. His question is that is there any one website or information portal where all the day-to-day developments in media law is regularly updated?
So there are, to be very honest, most of the content is available. When you go through your standard periodicals which are available, and specifically to media law, you get generally it's more industry news that you get over a period of time, and you'll have to relate it back to the context of the organization and the media companies that you're working with. So, for example, you may find music publications giving inputs and updates on what is the latest happening in the media and entertainment industry. So, for example, an ex-big music company is preparing to launch in India. So you would know, for example, that is going to have a disrupting effect. Perhaps, for example, a large petrochemical company which is diversifying into media and entertainment, you would know that there's a lot of opportunities opening up over there. So that is something where you would keep your eyes and ears on the regular news itself. You may also want to check out page 3 and the other gossip columns also. You may get some very good input because you know pretty much there's some there's some legal matters that always keep getting reported there or the other. That's where I would generally go back. Of course, I would not shy away from reading your regular legal updates also that keep coming in, Rishabh. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will love to resolve the same.
Thank you, Satya. I hope, Rishabh, that answers your question. Coming to the next question is that one of the most common perceptions that exist within the law students is that, and it is not a perception actually, I've applied to a lot of media houses and I've got the same reply that they are reluctant to take in freshers. They do not want to take in anybody who comes with no relevant experience, and especially somebody who's right out of the college. For people like those, and you were very like you just got a job with Balaji Telefilms right when you were out of the college. So
Mhm.
how do you think that one can break this barrier or of reluctance of various law firms and media houses of not taking in experienced people and still land up a job there?
So as I said, I would call myself a little fortunate because the way the legal function or legal system works, at least in Mumbai, is concerned, law schools are generally in the morning. You have the rest of the day for yourself. So that helped me get that internship, which was uninterrupted, which kind of worked in a phase of a work experience, which helped me definitely gave me a positive push. And to be very honest. I had a couple of options. One was Balaji was my first stint, and I'm very grateful for that. Having said that, I did have an alternative option from a larger media company, giving me a higher package actually at that particular time. But I chose Balaji because I knew that is where I would have got a better exposure uh, and of experience. Having said that, you have to keep in mind, as I said earlier, you have to be persistent. So when you're looking at opportunities, it's I understand when you go ahead and apply for it, they will come back saying that they are looking out for XYZ set of experiences. Etc. That is where I was asking you. You know, you have to be strategic in your approach. So by the time you're in your second year itself, and I was strongly advised, if you have, and it's never too late, of course. So if you're in your second year itself or first year even, try to find an internship or etc. If you're not in a not that is if you're working out of the major metros, work for a media lawyer or etc. Just even if you're pushing books, and just sitting and attending meetings or making minutes. I mean, it may feel very irrelevant, and you would feel that it's heading nowhere. But compared to maybe your friends and classmates who may be working in an 8-hour law firm, and wearing the suits, but it helps. It definitely helps because what happens is that you have an uninterrupted experience set, which will helps you with the skill set which I had highlighted earlier, which will bring you, of course, on board. Now, when I say this, having said that, it's never too late. In case you have missed the bus of internship, you can always start over here. When you are seeing opportunities for freshers, you start off. This is where you actually have to balance a couple of things. Where you may have to, work on, your CTC structure towards compared to and compromise on that in the early stages of your life so that you are able to get the relevant work experience required, and after a few years of struggle, of course, that is when things work out and for the better for you. And once you're in a pretty decent slot, I'm sure it works at your feet.
All right, Satya. The next question that I have for you is that speaking of barriers in itself, do you think LLM degree would in media laws and as a specialization in LLM in media laws would be of any help? And if yes, then what are some of the best LLM degree options available for people who want to pursue their career in media laws?
There are, see, as I said, there is several national law schools apply LLM, have LLM courses. You may choose to take them. Having said that, definitely brings the value. As I said, it can bring an edge to your CV. There's no denying that. But when it comes to your, where does it bring to your practical experiences? Because for me, I come from the space where having practical knowledge is much more important than having academic knowledge. Uh, I'm aware about the fact that LLM definitely helps if you're trying to pursue an international law degree, primarily in the US, especially if you want to get into media and entertainment in the US, in LA, for example. Yeah, it's very helpful there, and it allows you to join the bar and give the bar exam, of course, and join the bar. Having said that, in India, personally, it's a value addition, but I've never seen a specific value addition. But what it does is, in case, for example, you have missed out on IPR or copyright, in your curriculum, in case you've chosen some other subjects in your electives, that would help you get one once you're doing your LLM degree in media and entertainment. It will polish up that particular skill set for you.
All right. Satya, the next thing that we want to know about is that if you join us any standard corporate law firm or any standard law firm, you have the commercial team, you have the litigation team, and you have various other teams, right? And this is like a diversified option that is available to law students. They can pursue a standard on-desk job where they're just drafting contracts, and at the same time, they could also go ahead in the court and practice litigation if they want to. Does that happen in law firms in media law firms as well, or media law agencies as well? Do you have that option available, and what are the opportunities? What are the kind of opportunities or roles that are available for lawyers?
All right. So, well, media law is very diverse, as I said. You can have, I think you start off your career in a specific set. For example, yes, as you rightly pointed out, with contracts and litigation. Yes, you can choose which one you like. Some people are very good with the contract, some people are very good with the litigation, some people are good with a bit of both, and you can take pursue each one of them. But what you also have, a lot of things where you are much more integrated with business when it comes to media and entertainment law. So when you're working on contracts, you're much more integrated with the businesses. You're developing a skill set of the know-how of the businesses, which are very important. And when you're framing your contracts and you're drafting them, etc., you have to be completely embroiled in the businesses. You wouldn't have a very good idea about the taxation part of it, or the flow of rights, which is very important. Again, your IPR skill set comes over here again, very important. The other skill sets, of course, is over here as you also get to diversify into other opportunities. For example, there is content protection, which is anti-piracy, something which is not something which a very conventional lawyer would be getting themselves into. I mean, it's not a litigation, but it is somewhere between another offshoot of litigation, but it is another exciting ecosystem. You get into government relations and advocacy, where you're, representing your company, with other agencies or with the government bodies, when laws and regulations are framed, and so that your best interests of the companies are made. So, for example, when these amendments come in, each of these media companies make their representations to the government so that a consolidated opinion and viewpoints are taken into prospects, and that's again done by the lawyers within the company. And as I said, if you also eventually, once you get a much more better hang of businesses, you can also get into the business part of your company. And as I said, most of the lawyers in other countries, India is still growing, and of course, more business is a part of your profile. You become much more business aligned, and I think that is definitely a value addition where you see. So tomorrow you can actually get into and start your own production house and have a very good idea. You've brought in your network, you've brought in your skill sets, your laws, and all you have to do is you can own your own production house. So and get into entrepreneurship in media and entertainment. So there are a lot of prospects which are there, and as I said, there is. It's up to you how you tailor it, and and I would always encourage you to be more individualistic and not follow the herd, and be more self-aware about what your skill sets are. Identify your strengths and act upon it.
All right. Satya, the next thing that we would want to know is that What are the various laws that you deal with? I understand that with media laws, because we do not have comprehensive media laws in India as such. So there are a lot of other laws that are involved for interpretation purposes or whatever purposes they may be. So, what are the various laws that you deal with on a day-to-day basis?
So, as I said, your Bible is definitely a Copyright Act. Pretty much, you should know that inside out. That's something which is very important. Not just the way copyright the act functions, but also what are the types of rights which are available. Because in India, each and pretty much in the world, each and every aspect of the content that you create is monetizable. So it is basically you have to know the commercial aspects of you have to know the commercial aspects of your company, and you have to know what are the rights that your company has. So that is where copyright comes into the picture. You should have a good idea about what the commercial laws are, which are applicable. Having said that, you also, of course, should know your contract laws. And if you're working in new media companies, you should know your cyber laws also. So whether it's information technology, etc., the IT Act, etc., those are also very relevant. And of course, you have your trademark act, and you have your other regulations which come into the picture. And of course, you need to have a very good idea about, or at least try to start getting a very good idea about what the regulatory bodies are. And that is one aspect of it. Of course, if you decide to even get into the secretarial part of it, and the corporate part of the corporate laws part of it, the corporate laws are also very important, because most of the media companies are corporate entities. They are no longer small entities anymore, and they have their own set of corporate nuances which you have to follow. And that is very important for you to also be very abreast with company law and other laws, which are actually across the board for any corporate lawyer to be accustomed to.
All right. So then the next question is that you said that you deal with a lot of contracts in the course of
Yes.
a media law career. What are the different kinds of contracts that you deal with? Are they standard contracts that a lot of other companies deal with, or they are specific to media? And if yes, then what are the different kinds of contracts that you come across on a day-to-day basis?
So most of the media law and primarily is content, and it is how you acquire content, how you create content, and how you exploit content. So if you have to know, it's the flow of content right from the stage of it's being created to the final stage of its exploitation, to the time it reaches to each one of us. Whether it's on our phones or our television or our any particular platform which we work on. There's pretty much an agreement behind each one of them, from a simple agreement that you're clicking to accept when you download an app, to a much more complex agreement which you're drafting. And that is all done by the legal departments of the respective companies. If not, it's definitely vetted by the legal department. It includes various aspects of it. And as I said, I could think about licensing agreements, which are very important. You have assignments, so you have to know the difference between what a license and what an assignment is, especially in the context of an IPR, with an IPR perspective, and how you monetizing each component of it. Uh, so that's one of the main things. Then you have to also work on your transaction agreements, which are there, which you work from day-to-day basis. You could have you might be working on partner agreements where two companies are working with each other without exchanging any monetary values, and how you frame those kind of agreements. So it's a new agreement, and the new challenges every day. You also work on things like an NDA, and these are much more standard, of course. But the complexity of the agreements changes from organization to organization, and the type of entity you're working with. Uh, as I said, different industries, different standards.
Okay, so in that case, if you were to distinguish, or let's say categorize the broad headings of different kinds of contracts, what would be the major headings that you'll have in mind?
So as I said, I think the type of agreements which I said, when you're referring to categorization, would you want to elaborate on how you would want me to categorize it for you?
Yes, I'm sorry, can you come again?
Aditya, I was asking that if you asked me to categorize, would you be able to tell me that what kind of categorization you want me to guide you on?
Like if you could just do it on a broad subheading, like for example, if you have partnership agreements, then you have, you said various tenders, then there were IP agreements, there were agreements to
Yes.
get celebrities on board. Like,
So as I said, so that is again, so when I said that you have your license and the type of agreement, so it starts from anything from creating content. So when you're creating a content, so for example, if you're starting creating a television show, you're going to engage artists. So you're going to have your standard artist agreements. So your artist has to give their rights to you, they have to give the dates to you, their availabilities to you. That is something all you need to capture in it, including the special requirements, etc. Similarly, you will have to engage your producers, you would engage your directors, you would be engaging your music composers. If you're using certain compositions, you need to take permissions from your regular the requisite authorities. So there are it's as I said, you have to a larger project gets broken down into multiple projects, many projects like any tasks, and each one of them is again how your rights are being conferred upon. So at the end of the day, the end product, which when the producer or whoever finally owns the content has to make sure that he has all the rights, or he should have most of the rights which he has, so that he's able to exploit it down. So for example, if I would create a content, I would be able to exploit it on, say, an OTT platform, or on television, or through a film distribution, or through any other mechanisms, so which would go downstream towards, say, for example, you all when you're consuming it. So that's how it comes in, and of course you have to know from where and which territories you're looking at. So it's another very important aspect of any kind of media and entertainment laws, because all these agreements are a lot of them are cross transactional and cross border.
all right. So there, before we go ahead, if we were to take a standard contract in media, what would be
Yes.
the important clauses in that kind of an agreement?
So I would generally look at the grant. What is the primary actions of the agreement is, in terms of what kind of what is the scope of the agreement. That is a very important aspect of it. You would also want to see, for example, if it's related to the transfer IP, what is being transferred, and for which regions it gets transferred. So territory is very important again. A lot of because each territory you get a different set of rights where you can exploit it, and the values change. So say hypothetically speaking, when you're creating content or working on a content, if it's working a Hindi content, you would know Hindi speaking markets would be much more monetizable than selling it in non-Hindi speaking markets. Similarly, if you're creating a content from, say, a Tamil content, you would know, for example, it's not just applicable in, say, Tamil Nadu, but also could be applicable in other countries like Malaysia and Singapore, which has a huge Tamil diaspora. So you would want to, whenever you're creating such things, you should know where the territories where these rights would, or this content may get exploited. So that is something which I would look into, the territories of the agreements, which are very important. Having said that, you also want to know where your standard terms and conditions of the agreements also apply, and it changes from what kind of agreements are you working on, whether it's a B2B agreement or a B2C agreement. And having said that, you need to incorporate and tailor it in those particular manners. As I said, you want to keep jurisdictions very carefully crafted, because tomorrow, hypothetically speaking, if these agreements go on disputes, you may want to go these agreements to be recognized in places where laws would appreciate or recognize copyright laws. You want to be sitting in a jurisdiction where your contracts, that particular litigation goes in a perpetual doldrum, and which is basically more expensive for you. And if you're an in-house counsel, I think it's very important for you to realize that you're part of the organization and you need to save the company's money. So keeping that in mind, you have to be very strategic upon where you would want your jurisdictions to be placed. And I think that over the rest of them, you get to tailor it as per your company's rules and regulations and policies, and that can change from various companies to companies.
All right. So then my phone has been continuously buzzing with a lot of questions, and I'm going to ask you some of them right now.
Please go ahead.
The first question is coming from Abhishek Agarwal. His question is: do Netflix and Amazon Prime have to comply with censor board for original TV shows and movies streaming only on the app?
From what I know, that they are currently in an OTT platform. So, as I said, I would not be privy to give that kind of information because I'm not aware about their systems. But OTT currently does not have those regulations. But if they are showing a certain set of content, online, at least it's currently a little less regulated. Having said that, if it's a film content, it would have to go through CBFC, and if it's television content that is going, which is also being broadcasted or simulcasted, it may have to go through its own regulations, and it's generally most of the content to have an S&P check, which is standards and procedures checks, which are done, by which a lot of the content which be construed as obscene and could lead to legal consequences within India do get edited out, and that's why some of your favorite shows you will not be seeing the gory scenes which show up, in case you're seeing them in another country or to another jurisdiction.
All right. The next question that I have is from Mohana Thakur. Her question is, what is your take on the recent notification by the Ministry of I&B on content regulation in digital media?
Well, as I said, this is a question which we are currently working on, and it's still work in progress. Having said that, I think in my personal opinion, and this would be my personal and not my organization or any of the organizations which may I have represented. Uh, the best option is always self-regulation, which is and that is where the global best practices lie, and we are looking forward towards that kind of a role where the industry comes together and regulates on itself, taking into account the global best practices which are there. We would not, we would, government, once government regulations come into the picture, it becomes a little difficult and cumbersome. But having said that, one cannot stop, the government or regulatory bodies to take cognizance of any particular matter. And that is where we stand. And I think it's still work in progress, and we'll have a better clarity maybe in a few more months when things are much more clearer.
All right. We also have a question wherein you're being asked about what's your take on the Cambridge Analytica and how does it affect Indian media policies?
Yeah,
Sorry.
sure. So I think it's very important to keep in mind what Cambridge Analytica controversy had done. And I think that is something which is very important, especially when you're counsels for any of the media companies, especially when the companies are getting into new media and technology, is to uh, be very protective about the data privacy of your consumers, and be very customer centric when it comes to that approach. There are regulations which are there. There are best practices which are there. There are other places like you have the GDPR and other regulations which are coming into place. And as I said, you would want to advise your companies to have those kind of policies in place which would protect data. Having said that, as I said, things are monetizable and data does get monetized by some of the companies. I'm not in the position to discuss that. As I said, those are they are subject to different companies and their own respective policies. Cambridge Analytica, I understand, is referring back to a social media networking platform. They would have their own policies, and I guess they are responding to the regulatory bodies as per their regulatory mandates, which are being governed by them.
All right. Satya, before we move ahead, we also have a question from Manoj Singh who wants to know what is the private, that is the streaming sites, and how do they protect themselves from the government?
Excuse me?
How do the private streaming websites protect themselves from the government policies or regulations?
So as I said, because currently this is a new media platform. It's not a matter of when, but it's a matter of if. Where not a matter of if, but a matter of when the government would actually come into the picture. As I said, this is still going on. So the question is, if and I know a lot of media content companies are pushing the limit, and they're rightly to, in their own point of view, rightly entitled to do so. Having said that, it's still very great to be very candid about how they're getting away. Some of them are getting away, and that's why you have, which you rightly pointed out earlier in the earlier question, that why is the ministry coming up with these notifications? Because the ministry is observing the fact that some of these content which would definitely be scrutinized much more strictly if it was on television or if it was in a film, is getting away with it. So having said that, uh, a lot of the OTT platforms and media online platforms would be advised to follow standard uh, best practice, which I said, and that is, I think, again being discussed internally amongst their various organizations, and they're implementing it. Some of them are their own business risks, and if they are willing to take those risks, it's their business call, and I'm sure the legal departments, respective legal departments, are there to support them.
Satya, you've been dealing with a lot of media companies by now. You have dealt with a lot of media companies till now, and a lot of them have ventured into the digital space. They ventured into websites. The question is that how much has GDPR increased the role of lawyers into policy making and into implementation of GDPR into companies who have certain audience in the EU or who have visitors from the EU websites?
No, so GDPR, is, since it's right now work in progress, is definitely made life a lot more difficult for people who thought that they would get away with a lot of these things which were taken for granted. You have to be a little much more protected, and rightly so. Having said that, that's pretty much the reasons why we all the legal departments. I think most of the lawyers are having sleepless nights because they need to implement a lot of these policies which have been brought in. Having said that, yes, it is definitely a very demanding task, and as you rightly pointed out, it's important. It is mandatory, and if you have to function in EU and some of these Western countries, you have to follow these regulations, and these are and most of them are working on it, and implementations are in process. From what I know, most of the organizations I'm aware about are towards the last stages of implementation of the respective GDPR rules and regulations.
All right, but Sada, tell us something that GDPR was supposed to be implemented from the 25th of May. It has been implemented, as a matter of fact, from the 25th of May. At this point in time, somebody who's a fresher but who has immense knowledge of GDPR and its implementation, how far do you think firms and companies would be willing to take them into their organization?
I think that there's definitely a lot of prospect towards it because, to be very honest, one thing is there that as I had, and I will take you back to the earlier part of my discussion, is you need to keep understanding and analyzing how the media and entertainment industry is growing. As I said, in the last 10 years, when I joined from Balaji to where I am currently, the industry and the industrial ecosystem has evolved and diametrically evolved. Having said that, if you are amping yourself up with that particular skill set of, especially of GDPR, a lot of companies, I'm sure, are looking at are facing maybe facing challenges implementing these provisions. And if you bring that skill set and if you highlight that, as I said, in your CV and your profile, and you push it across, I'm sure they would be willing to consider your profile into the same, and you would have a definitely have a good prospect in those particular organizations.
All right, Satya. Satya, the next question that I have is that you said that you deal a lot with IP laws, and in specific, you deal a lot with copyright laws. If you could just tell us some of the important provisions that you have to work on an everyday basis, and people should have a very good hold of those clauses, that would be good to know.
I highlighted earlier when you're working with IP, I think it's very important to know your rights. Your what kind of rights do you have? What kind of the rights can which you can give? So you can't give rights which you do not have. So and it's very important to do kind of the proper due diligences. So, for example, when you're acquiring content, you have to know whoever is selling you that content. He himself should have he or she or them should have the right to give that content to you. So it's very important to make sure that the links are established. You have the details in it. Once you have your details in it, you should be able to segregate the details and monetize them. So it's basically like buying a car and in a lock, stock, and barrel, and making sure that the car is functioning so that you can sell each part of the car in piecemeal format so that you can make more money than when you bought a second-hand car. So that's how it works. You have to know your rights. Rights management is something very important. And what are the copyrights applicable? Where are they applicable? And how you can, assign them, how, where you can assign them, for what period you need to do it for, and then what happens when when it comes back to you, and how you're able to monetize it forward, and how you are able to monetize it when the ecosystem changes. So, for example, your conventional media formats, whether it was television, radio, etc., is now moving to the online platform. So it is online streaming or online OTT platforms. How you're able to monetize it. And similarly, if you've already given those rights away, you won't be able to do that anymore. The licensor who's already has the rights will be able to exploit that. So be very conservative, be a little bit more miser when you're doing that. So when you're having that particular point of view, when you're drafting your agreements and your contracts, I think you'll have a better prospect of bringing a lot of value to your organization and to your department when you're closing these contracts, especially with IP related matters are concerned.
All right. Satya, before we move ahead, I have two questions from Ritu Parna Padi right now. Her question is, what is your view on the recent YouTube policies changes on regulating advertisements on videos, and how companies analyze where their products are advertised and when to pull out from the YouTube platform?
So there are, as I said, YouTube has been changing. As I said, as you rightly pointed out, GDPR has come up, and I'm sure all the organizations, including YouTube, have made the requisite modifications. How advertisements have come on YouTube and how YouTube functions according to it. There are an entire network and an ecosystem of agreements and contracts that are taking place. So there is something called media agencies, which are involved, which basically form an intermediary, which is the middleman between the brands and the media companies. And these media agencies pretty much help where the brand has to go and at what particular time. And that is where a lot of the monetization happens. So you would have your media agencies that would buy spots, but in particularly whether it is on television, where the advertisements which you watch on TV, or the advertisements that you hear on radio, or even the billboards that you see outside your house, or the video that you see between playing your YouTube videos. They're all spaces which are bought in particular platforms. And each of these ecosystems have their own laws and regulations. So, for example, a television broadcasting company would have its own set of regulations, etc., which needs to be followed. So, if a certain brand does not meet that particular brand, the quality of that particular broadcaster, they would not be able to advertise on that particular platform, and that is done through your media planning agencies. So that those are looked after and taken care of, and there is an entire ecosystem. And as I had said, there's a contract pretty much for everything from end to end, and there is an entire ecosystem of agreements that work on that particular format.
All right. So then the next question that I have is also from Ritu Parna Pati. Her question is, how do we, and this is a question which is related to more cyber laws. Her question is, how do we track someone's illegal activities on the deep dark web? Are the current media laws adequate to handle any deep web activities?
Well, from my personal experience, it's not difficult to track people down. It is very easy. Having said that, it does require a lot of resources, and it is extremely resource intensive. Now, over a period of time, I think the organizations which you are part of, whether in any legal department, you would have to evaluate whether you would want to spend that kind of resources to track that particular person down or that particular entity down for that particular action. Having said that, the laws in India, you will have to change it or modify it or sensitize your law enforcement officers to be more precise, to be able to understand the complexities of that particular law. You have to I've had experiences in my past where I have had to go down to beta cities, in the middle of central India, where I had to explain a local police officer what a copyright infringement was, and pretty much literally sit and have a masterclass with him on copyright and IPR so that they would understand it over a period of time. And only to have the fact that when a person was caught, it is a bailable offense, so the person is out in a couple of months. So you will have to work that particular system out or exactly know what the impact is. The laws are weak, having said that, in India, but you will have to strategize. As I said, every organization strategizes differently. Where a lot of the broadcasters just try to make sure that your monetizing period is protected, so that you're able to maximize during that particular window period. So, for example, if you're a filmmaker, your opening weekend is the first couple of months max to max, where you are able to monetize the content max. Have highest box office revenues on that particular content. After that, it's pretty much on television and other platforms, and you've sold your rights, you've made your money, and you're moving on to the next project. So that is where it comes in. For the broadcaster, it is the time that he acquires it for the broadcasting, for him to take it forward to make sure it's protected at that particular period of time. So, as I said, different entities have different various ways of functioning. About deep dark web, as you pointed out, it's not impossible, but it is, as I said, it is very resource intensive, and it's again commercial call which different organizations take at different times. If you are a purely a content protection company and you're looking into anti-piracy operations and you have the resources and time to invest into it, it's very much possible.
Satya, you said that media law depends a lot on interpersonal relationships. My
Yes.
question to you is that how can one network enough to make good contacts into media law and ensure a secure career for them in the future?
So as I said, when you work on your interpersonal relationships, it's very important that when you are working in a corporate function, you don't straitjacket yourself just within the legal department. You go and you do have a interaction with your commercial team, with your business team, your business development team, your finance team, your all your other teams which are coming into place. Because for them, legal is pretty much your uh, the common node for wherever they have any queries. They would always come to legal for, and this is where you would use that opportunity to. Not only excel by giving them sound, reasonable advice, which is to their satisfaction as well as beneficial to your organization and your respective companies, which of course which helps bring their value to them achieving their goals, which is what they will say that, okay, hey, that guy helped me out at that particular time, this guy is a good guy, let's stay in touch, and then you're in touch with them either on social media or through your references, etc. Tomorrow, the ecosystem is so small comparatively, though it's a very large industry, is it's not unheard of in the last 10 years that I've bumped into almost every second person whom I've either worked with in the past or might just have to work in the not so distant future. And that is where it comes in. So it helps build bridges, and that is how it comes across. And you have to be able to cater to them when they are within the organization. That is what I meant with your interpersonal relationships. You've had friends in school or your law school, or whom you worked with who are also working in these particular law firms. uh, Bring that relationship across. Maybe if you're living in a media centric city like Bombay, if you have grown up with people who have now become media entertainment talents, you can use that to capitalize on certain relationships. Similarly, but the right way would be, through your work. And when you're working in an organization, or through, as I said, when you're interning, your clients see you perform. They have that kind of recall value, and that definitely brings a positive affirmation to your credentials when you're growing in the industry.
Okay, so then the next question that have from you might sound a little rude, but we would want to know what is an average pay package that a media lawyer or a lawyer with a specialization in media laws generally has.
Okay, so it depends upon actually different types of organizations. So it can be, um, as I said, how you negotiate your skill set. What is the JD? What is the requirement, and what is the urgency of it? So if it's a large organization, uh, and you're one of many, you might not get best packages available. However, if it's a small organization and you're one of few, you might be able to negotiate a much more valuable package. I would not want to place numbers because some of them can be deceiving. As I said, it can change from practice to practice, region to region. Uh, Cities to cities, of course. So Bombay, of course, being a much more expensive city, Mumbai, you might draw a better package compared to, say, another city, say, for example, in Calcutta, or other, say, metros, for example, comparatively. Uh, Having said that, again, which type of organization you're part of would also depends. If you're a part of a startup, you may draw a different package compared to if you're part of a media, a broadcasting company, compared to if you're a part of a production house, and or if you're part of an association. So, as I said, it changes. For the best thing the advice I can give you is on this is, when you have your sharp skill set and you're at the right place at the right time, I think if you demand what you want, I'm sure you're able to get what you want. It's worked for me. So
Thanks, Satya. One final question: What is what is the possible suggestion that you would want to give to the viewers watching us right now who want to make a career into media laws?
you've got to be passionate about media and entertainment. I think that's very important. I mean, it should not be. I mean, I would personally have that uh, zeal towards what is happening in the media and entertainment industry, because one thing, it's never boring. It's There's something new happening. Even if you're on a weekend at home, you suddenly realize that somebody said something somewhere in your organization, and you would have to go on a damage control and work on a weekend, and it's you need to have that kind of a dedication and a zeal towards it. And of course, a yearning to learn more, a yearning to absorb and modify, change, and grow within the changing ecosystem. As I said, media is growing, media is changing, media is evolving. So you need to change, grow, and evolve. And I think that is very important. So if you feel that uh, I would always strongly suggest that to have that drive within you. It may take certain sacrifices. You may have to make those certain sacrifices, but at the end of the day, it's worth it, because yeah, it's worth it.
All right. Thank you so much, Satya, for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure having you on the
Thank you
show.
for having me, Aditya.
Thank you so much, Satya. For all of you who are watching us right now, thank you so much for joining us today on an hour with LawSikho. That's all for today. This is me, Aditya, signing off. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tomorrow, we are being joined by Mr. Harshal Bhuta, who is an international tax lawyer and expert on various issues related to tax law. Do not miss that session. And till then, goodbye, good night, and out, LawSikho. Thank you,
Thank you,
Satya.
guys.